Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. Joined tonight, Tuesday night, December 9th, by the guy, Josh Bennett. Dude, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Some exciting stuff coming out today. So been a busy day of reading this and that, taking in the reactions and stuff. But big University of Utah news day for sure. So excited to talk about it.
Yes, a big news day for sure for the University of Utah. And obviously that is what we're going to be talking about on this episode. We're going to be talking about what exactly Utah announced, why it matters, and how it's going to impact the University of Utah, Utah fans, and all of that in between. So with the news that dropped today, Utah announced the creation of a new LLC, Utah Brands Entertainment LLC, with a private equity partnership that could bring in roughly $500 million in capital. So that's what was reported by Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger to start the morning. And then we had the opportunity to go up to the University of Utah after the Board of Trustees unanimously approved the move and made it official. We had the opportunity to hear from President Taylor Randall and Utah Athletic Director Mark Harlan, and they shared some insights and officially announced the move later on. But Bennett, before we get into all the details, when you saw the news broke this morning, initial thoughts, initial reactions.
Yeah, no. Money, for better or worse, kind of makes the world go round and round. A lot of conversations, a lot of sentiments around, does Utah have money? Does Utah not have money? Can Utah keep up in this new age of college athletics with how much money it takes to keep up and things like that? So when you see a $500 million number next to University of Utah, you start to get some confidence that, hey, Utah can hang. And then when you start to read the details and you start to understand what it is and how it's set up and what it might mean for Utah in the future and for the fans and for the program and the players and everybody involved, there's a lot of thoughts that go into it, and excited to dive deeper here soon.
Yeah, no, definitely. And this has been something that I think some people were very curious to see how the reaction would be, what the reaction would be today. And when the news dropped, it didn't disappoint. The reactions, throughout social media, did not disappoint. And I think it's all, at this point, it's all valid, right? Whether you like it, whether you love it, it's all on the table. And I think it's fair to have some preconceived notions about private equity, but I think as you start to dig into what is actually going on with the university and what this actually is, I think there's reason to be pretty optimistic for Utah and all of this. So let's get into what was actually announced today. So in their press release, a message from President Randall and Mark Harlan, they opened with the state of college athletics and the new rev share era that we're in and the strain that it's put on a lot of programs across the country, right? We've seen a number of programs announce that they're operating in deficits. And so, this is a move for Utah that will hopefully address some of those issues. And with that, they said in their press release that they are announcing the formation of Utah Brands Entertainment LLC, a new company owned by the university's foundation. So Utah Brands Entertainment will enable Utah athletics to transition to a modernized business model that can more strategically build the brand and strengthen athletic programs. And so with that, with the new LLC, they shared this as well, that they plan on partnering with prominent university supporters as well as Otro Capital, a firm with deep operational experience in sports, entertainment, and media, to help support and strengthen this new venture in the long-term growth potential of University of Utah athletics. So couple things to pick apart there. Bennett, I'll let you go first. What stands out to you in that, just in the announcement of the LLC and how they're going about it?
Yeah, the biggest thing that stands out in all of this is that it's not some kind of loan. It's not some, hey, private equity coming in, throwing $500 million at the University of Utah. University of Utah has to figure out how to get that back. This is a true partnership, and that was something big that went into the decision making behind all of this. But a true partnership, and that money comes from that money comes from the Utah donors themselves. So this is something where it very much feels like a true partnership. Otro Capital is going to come in. They have experience handling large amounts of money, like $500 million, lots of money, and comes in as a partner with that experience to be able to manage that and help that money make more money for the University of Utah. Obviously, with private equity, there's some of that self-interest on their side of things, but this is something where Utah brings in experience that is going to be able to make sure that this money is as productive as possible and helps achieve those end goals that everybody involved at the University of Utah has in mind.
Yeah. And so I think it's important to understand what the Utah Brands and Entertainment LLC is going to do and what it's going to be, because that is actually what Otro Capital is actually investing in. So they're not taking ownership in the University of Utah and the athletic department itself. They're actually investing in this LLC. And so what this is tasked with, it's going to house many of the department's revenue functions. So ticket sales, concessions, media rights, other commercial, opportunities and revenue generating opportunities. That is what this new Utah Brands and Entertainment LLC is going to be responsible for. And that is what Otro Capital is actually investing in. So it is an arm of Utah Athletics. It is not actually, so Otro isn't going to suddenly have a controlling stake in, who Utah hires as a coach or who they pursue in the transfer portal. That's not what this is. This is strictly investing in, the revenue generating operation of Utah Athletics.
Which is important because that's like a side of things that Utah does need some help with. There's a gap there with, how much University of Utah needs to make in that revenue department. It's important to understand that with the rev share, Utah's operating below the line. This allows Utah to operate above the line. So with Otro coming in and touching all things revenue, it's a great setup for Utah. They're, again, to underline what you said, and what was made very clear up front, university's not giving up their authority to make the personnel, the program, the decisions, like who's going to be coach, who's going to be on the roster. They're more in how do we maximize our ticket sales and concessions and all those different revenue streams. And we'll get into some of that, what this might mean for the fans and stuff. But that's a very important point to highlight is the University of Utah will still be running its athletic department. It's Otro Capital is going to help on the revenue side and help bring those revenue streams up to where they need to be to get to where they want to go. Yeah.
No, and that's a great point. And I think that sort of gets us to the why. Why would Utah do this? And why is this beneficial to Utah, right? Obviously, the biggest thing and the most obvious thing is the influx of capital and getting Utah to above the line in terms of operating costs. That is so valuable because, what we're talking about is improving the overall value of Utah athletics, right? From just the overall brand value to the experience that fans have at games to the competitiveness of programs. All of those things are on the table with this, and having an influx of capital and resources to utilize is going to allow Utah to start doing some of the things that a lot of fans want Utah to start doing, right? Because they've been operating in a deficit. it's been hard to do some of the things that many fans want, right? So getting this allows Utah to, essentially establish their floor, right? Secure their floor, where now a lot of these donations and stuff actually have more meaning and more positive impact than just plugging holes and all of that. So I think first and foremost is addressing, obviously the deficit and having that capital to secure your floor moving forward, I think is a big reason why in the new rev share, where you're now responsible for $20 million per year to pay these athletes, that has to come from somewhere, and this addresses that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also something to mention too is like Utah's the first school in the country to structure something like this, right? So having that first mover kind of advantage there, there's some advantages there, but lots of different little pieces of this that make it attractive for Utah. And first and foremost, it's gonna, like this massive amount of money is going to help Utah compete nationally, be able to put together the rosters needed to stay competitive with places like Texas or Ohio State, Texas Tech, places that have, this seemingly endless tranche of money just coming in over and over again. It's going to allow Utah to compete nationally, can potentially see upgraded facilities. I know there's, every game day, there's somebody that makes a funny about the concourses being too tight. That's having that stronger NIL game, having that professional business expertise. There's a lot of different pieces that go into this that, when you unpack it, there's a lot of net positive here.
Yeah, this goes from, I think Harlan said this, or maybe President Randall said this. Somebody said this, but this goes from surviving to now putting yourself in a position where you can potentially start thriving in this new era, right? I think that's really kind of the big thing is these programs are treading water, trying to keep their head above water while they're taking on all of these new financial demands and stresses. This now addresses that, where you now have, again, your floor secured, where you can start building on top of things and adding different sources of revenue to really kind of up the value and the production, the entertainment value of a lot of things that you put on. So obviously, so the financial benefit, right? The influx of cash. I think having business expertise is going to be so big for Utah to have these Otro Capital as partners, learning from these guys. I think Mark Harlan shared that these guys will act as mentors to Utah. And you kind of alluded to it as well, that Utah needs help on this front, right? Needs help in terms of providing better experiences, upping the entertainment value of those and all of that sort of stuff. This helps. These guys know what they're doing. They've been involved in a number of different sports venues and a bunch of different organizations and programs. Dallas Cowboys, San Diego Padres, Cleveland Browns, F1 racing. The list goes on. When you look at what Otro Capital has been involved in, there's a lot of experience here, and I think that's going to really benefit Utah in figuring out the value and providing a great entertainment product for the fan base here.
Yeah, and a friend of the program, if you will, brought up a great point earlier today when talking with him. This isn't people with money that got interested in sports. This is people who have an interest in sports that got into the money. So it's good to see people that know sports, are passionate about sports, understand the business side of sports, have experience in front offices at the professional levels. That's stuff that you want to see, because this is not that money. This is not along the lines of like live golf, like kind of money, right? This is a New York based group that is passionate about sports, and they're, money makes the world go round, right?
No, and like this is the new era of college sports, right? if you're still holding on to the idea that somehow, some way, the genie is going to get put back in the bottle, where we get to college athletics the way that we knew it growing up, where these athletes are no longer compensated and they're just amateurs, right? They're maintaining their amateurs. It's never going back to that, and it never was. This is the next step in the evolution of college athletics. Once money got involved, this was always going to be a step in this process. And so for Utah, like, keep in mind, we are talking about Utah here, which has always been slow to embrace this sort of change, right? We were just talking I can't remember last time we were talking about it, but Kyle Whittingham, you go back to 2022, USC coming to town, and Kyle Whittingham goes on a rant about NIL and how this is the new era of college football. And, you remember, just Utah was slow to embrace NIL, right? Slow to embrace what it meant to have donors, right? Getting the donors to buy into money going to a collective to then share with athletes. Utah's just slow to that. And I think for Utah to be the program to kick the door down on private equity, I think really says a lot. And I think having President Taylor Randall at the helm of all of this, being the president of the university with his background in business and entrepreneurship and all of those sort of things, I think Utah fans should feel really optimistic and confident that you've got a guy in place that knows what he's doing and is going to be the guy that Utah needs at this time right now.
Yeah. Lot of respect and appreciation to President Randall for the time that has been put into this, the thought that has been put in this. This isn't something that was rushed overnight. You see some comments on the timeline about people saying, "Oh, another school could have this done in a few days." This doesn't happen overnight. This is a year plus in the making, and it didn't happen overnight because this is a calculated risk. There is always risk involved, right? But it's a calculated risk, and Utah got to the point where they felt good enough to move forward with Otro Capital, felt like they had their partner, felt like they had their details that they wanted. Being first in this space allowed them to have a little more of that leverage. And it's a good setup, and it's something important to keep in mind, right? It's people, there's people outside of the University of Utah, fan base, supporters, etc., that want to point the finger at Utah and say Utah's ruining college football. But keep in mind, 2 months ago, Brett Yormark was talking about private equity deals for the Big 12 as a conference. There were some mixed feelings. Some people on board, some people not on board. Probably not hard to figure out who's not on board, right? The people who have that oil money, or I don't know, maybe the cookie money, whatever. It's Big Ten, right? Big Ten also looking at private equity. That was about to go through. That started to gain a lot of traction amongst the Big Ten. But then Ohio State and Michigan, two programs well established, don't really need that support, or totally okay with their other schools having a foot on their neck. Ohio State and Michigan made a fuss. Big Ten stuff, that fizzled, that stalled out. Florida State stuck in the ACC, huge buyout number, looking for some of that dirty money, if you will, to come in, buy them out of the ACC so they can make a move, they can get mobile, right? Utah found a good situation, and Utah took it first, and you're probably going to see Utah reap the rewards. So it's not some big evil idea that Utah had. This is where, to your point, to wrap that up, this tangent up, to your point, this is where things were moving anyway, and this is Utah skating to where the puck's going, not where the puck is.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well said. Do we just end it there? I think that was a great, no, I'm just kidding. We've still got plenty more to hit on, but dude, drop the mic on that. I do think you hit on a couple of things here that I want to hit on, and I want to, with this new LLC, I'm fascinated to see how this is actually set up, right? Because as we read in the press release, Utah is setting up partners who have been big time supporters, prominent university supporters, as they put it, as well as Otro Capital, right? When I read that, prominent Utah University of Utah supporters, like, who do we think that is? Who could that possibly be? Maybe a couple family names that are on buildings up there, so I think that's really important to keep in mind. I know a lot of people have been talking about, well, you sold your soul and all of this, and you're forgetting who you are. There are still big time prominent Utah supporters that are heavily involved in this. And I think it was really interesting today. Now, obviously, Yahoo reported that the deal can potentially bring up to $500 million in capital. And when we asked President Randall about that number, he refused to comment on the specifics, on the details, on the numbers. One, because the deal isn't finalized. It's going to be finalized, he said, in early 2026. So we'll wait and see what the numbers are. But I think, too, it's more than just Otro Capital. I think you're going to see a significant amount of money donated if we do see this, right? If we do get to see the details, I think you'll see a significant amount of money donated by some of the big names that have long been supporters of Utah athletics, and they essentially become quasi-owners of Utah athletics, right? That's where this is sort of trending. And frankly, good, good, because this is, there is so much to this where, we've heard a lot over the last couple of years of growing donor fatigue, right? Donors feel like they're just throwing money away with NIL and what it's become, right? Troy Aikman just had shared some thoughts on UCLA NIL, shared that, he wrote a big check for a UCLA player this year, and now he's in the transfer portal and he's never going to donate to UCLA NIL again. That's a lot of people across the country, not just at UCLA, not just at Utah, not just everywhere. There are donors everywhere that are experiencing this donor fatigue because, again, it just feels like you're throwing money away. What this does, and again, we don't know all the details of how it's going to work, is it allows these big donors to take an ownership stake in Utah athletics, have value and return on these investments so that they can donate willingly and get returns on that, where it's not just throwing the money away at players, right? Utah is still going to be able to then distribute money to these players and have it that way. But at least the donors are getting some value in return. And I think that is so important because, the Huntsmans, the Eccles, all of those families mean so much to the success of the University of Utah. It's important to keep those relationships strong, and just to provide value back to those families for sure.
Absolutely. You could look at the University of Utah's roster across any sport. You could look at the roster across the country, any roster you want. Pick a roster. There has been money lit on fire somewhere in some way, shape, or form. And this allows some of that money to not just get lost in the ether, right?
Right.
These legacy donors for the University of Utah that have been doing this for a lifetime, been giving back to the University of Utah for a lifetime, for them to be able to get some returns now, I think that's a big deal. And then that's going to also incentivize future donors, right? They don't now they can get a little bit of stake, get a little skin in the game, and that's important. I mean, you look at the stock market, right? You're allowed to invest in your favorite brands, your favorite companies, organizations, whatever, and it's kind of the same idea. And this opens up another way to make money. And the big thing is the majority control remains with the University of Utah. So what does that mean? That means that this 500 million number that's projected, more than half of that is going to come from within, right? This isn't going to be Otro Capital coming in and putting in 450 of the 500 million. There's going to be large money from select. They're being very selective of who they let in. It's not going to be something that you can go onto your Robinhood app and, I'm going to buy some shares of Universe. It's all being done in a really savvy, smart way and it's all in the big money is being managed by people who are professionals at managing money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the one thing we should probably hit on before we start talking about how this is going to impact fans. You brought up the Big Ten, and I think that this is something where, if you're Otro and you're looking at opportunities to really place a bet on somebody that could really up their value in the next 5-7 years, Utah is one of those programs where you feel like with conference realignment on the horizon and a potential Big Ten invite, Otro, you're probably taking a calculated risk where you're feeling pretty good about Utah's chances of getting that Big Ten invite at some point and making that move. And if you're Utah, right, the important thing for you as an athletic department is you've got to be competitive. You've got to be among the top programs in the country in both football and basketball. You've got to be competitive. And to have this, right, an influx of capital that you can now utilize to help shore up, your finances to put a really competitive team on the field or on the hardwood, that makes a lot of sense. And so you're looking at this in terms of partnerships, and I think it says a lot about where Otro feel about Utah and the Big Ten sometime down the road.
Yeah, you got to imagine that neither party, Otro or the University of Utah, enters this partnership with some kind of confidences, maybe not assurances, but confidences that Utah might take a step into, a Big Ten, where all of a sudden there would be more money, more revenue, some payoff there for that private equity partner. If you look at, a lot of the reasons what makes Utah attractive for the Big Ten, I know it's talked about every day, but there's one time slot that the Big Ten doesn't cover. That's the Mountain Time Zone. Utah, with that Association of American Universities tag, being a research institution, that's a big deal for the Big Ten. Utah's got it. The time slot, like I just said, Utah's got it. There's a little bit of gaps on that West Coast into the rest of the Big Ten country that need a little bit of filling. So Utah brings that in. Utah's no longer a small market kind of place. It's booming. It's like a top 30 market at this point. Yeah. It's no joke. It's a big piece, and Utah, with the emphasis it puts on athletics, it's a good fit for the Big Ten. And you got to imagine that, this is totally speculating, but you got to imagine that a partnership like this comes into play with something bigger for Utah in mind.
Absolutely. I think if you're Otro and you're looking at investing in a program, again, it's something like this where you feel like you're going to get that return. It's a Big Ten invite. You add that Big Ten logo next to the Utah logo, and that ups the brand value significantly, right? And so I do think there is that. It was interesting. I was looking at something. I Googled like brand value University of Utah, and I totally forgot that I wrote this or that this published last January. But the Wall Street Journal published something last year listing the top valuations across the country of football programs. Guess how much the Wall Street Journal values Utah's football program at?
I don't even know where to begin with a guess. Like 100 million.
425 million.
Don't know where to guess. 425 million.
And again, this is last January, and this is if these programs could be sold like professional franchises, how much would they be worth? That was essentially the analysis premise on this valuation by the Wall Street Journal was, if these programs could be sold like professional franchises, how much would they be worth? And they deemed Utah a value of $425 million. And so you think of, okay, you've got that in your back pocket, right? You feel good about the value of your football brand. Now suddenly you have an influx of cash where you can start competing, pretty consistently at the top of the game. And, and again, with the Big Ten on the horizon, if you're Otro, you're looking at those numbers and you're feeling pretty good about what the outlook looks like for the University of Utah on that front. So pretty interesting, pretty interesting.
If it can become one of those like buy low, sell high. Utah does have that in 5 to 7 years, can buy Otro out for whatever, it'd be like grabbing Utah when they're in the Mountain West and then selling them when they're in the Pac-12, or buying them in the Big 12, selling them when they're in Big 10. Yep.
It's interesting, man. So all right, let's get to how this actually impacts Utah's future, and that means the university, that means the fan base. How is this actually going to impact University of Utah athletics? So obviously, first and foremost, shoring up the finances is going to open up a number of different things for Utah. I think having that LLC, where that becomes the revenue generating, home base of Utah athletics, where you can start to look for corporate sponsorship opportunities, that essentially can become almost like a advertising agency for Utah's NIL. There's a lot of different things that they can do with that. So I'm fascinated to see, but I think just in general, getting the influx of capital, addressing the rev share portion of Utah athletics, right? Having that secure where you're going to be at the max allowed that you're able to share, which this year was $20.5 million. Next year, I think it's going to go up, 4%, to 22 million or something like that. But you're going to have that funded to the max each and every year, because of this new endeavor. So you're going to have that. You're going to have the full 22 million. And then that's going to open up opportunities beyond that with third party NIL with the LLC. And I think I'm really fascinated to see what that means for Utah specifically this year, because you're looking at 2026 and you're feeling pretty good about Utah's outlook right now. You get this finalized by January and suddenly you're going in the transfer portal and you're going into that hungry, looking to eat.
No, absolutely. And I'm blanking as I get going there. So on the NI. Oh, here we go. No. So okay. Talking about how we get to to get to that 20.5 million, Utah would have to pass the hat and try to, that's where a lot of the donations, the money would go, is to just get to, making sure that we're filling out that full amount. And now the money that comes in, that extra money that comes in, goes to that fun stuff. That's what I was trying to get at, but no. So more stuff for fun, for fun stuff, if you will. When you talk about the game day experience, you talk about facilities, stadiums, things like that. You're going to have Olympics coming. There's just a lot more. That money can go further into more fun things instead of just making sure that University of Utah's athletics department is functional.
Right. That's the point, right? You're going from surviving to thriving, where now the money that donors were donating, where that was paying the bills, that's now you're able to go out. Your bills are paid for. Now you can go out and you can spend a little bit on different things. And that includes the game atmosphere, the things that we see at the games for entertainment, right? T-shirt tosses, having hype teams and dunk contest teams during halftime. All of those things that we've seen complained about at the Huntsman Center specifically, right? Like all of those things that people want to see at the Huntsman Center and at Rice-Eccles Stadium. You're going to start to be able to do more of that stuff because you've got your bills paid for. You've got a coupon for your bills. and now you're able to spend a little bit. Yeah, I think that's a big thing. In terms of what the impact is going to be on the regular fans, because I do think we need to address this, right? There is going to be an impact. Utah fans are going to experience, ticket and price increases. And it was interesting. I think somebody on Twitter did a little study. They went back and looked at some of the ticket price increases from Otro Capital's other partnerships, Cleveland Browns, Dallas Cowboys. The Browns, I think, went up, $10 per ticket is what that was. And then the Dallas Cowboys. And look, the Dallas Cowboys are a very unique brand. They are the most totally different beast, right? And they are going to be able to charge whatever the heck they want because they're the Dallas Cowboys. But I think the Cleveland Browns, right, where you saw a minimal increase at $10 per ticket, I would anticipate something like that. Mark Harlan talked about this. They have a ton of data. They look at the analytics and they look at the value. But at the end of the day, he said it's going to come back to common sense. We know our fan base, and that's going to be what dictates what we do. So he acknowledged the fact that they've raised ticket prices pretty consistently over the years, and that's going to continue moving forward because that's just where we're at with college athletics.
Yeah, and I think it's, anybody who thinks that their season ticket prices might double or some of those single game tickets might double, it's not going to be that catastrophic. The priority has always been around Rice Eccles is filling that stadium, making sure that it's full. That's why you don't see expand it to 75,000 and just see what happens. It's having that thing packed is what makes it special, right? And you're totally right. Season ticket prices, they raise every year. And when you see, for the season ticket holders out there, when you see that first bill come in, it is going to be higher, and it's going to be significantly higher because there's 7 home games next year. So keep that in mind. But when you look at it on a per ticket basis, let's say that it's $10 per ticket. So your season ticket's now $70 more plus that 7th game. That $10, though, if you think about it, if you're a season ticket holder, would you pay $10 more to make it work? Probably. I hope so.
Probably. And look, it's clear that Utah is hearing the message, the complaints from Utah fans. I was at the game, Utah versus Cal Baptist. I was at the game Saturday night. Not a great game. Obviously, Cal Baptist ranked number 130 in Ken Palm and all that, right? So not a big game. But what we saw an improved product in between timeouts. We saw a hype team tossing T-shirts out multiple times throughout the game. And so they're taking notes. And I think Utah has shown that over time that they are willing to embrace ideas from the fan base. They hear the complaints. And so with this, right, Mark acknowledged, or President Randall acknowledged the fact that we need to be sure that we're providing the value that fans want, the entertainment value that fans want and need to justify some of these ticket cost price increases. And I think that's going to be important, holding Utah to that, right? Holding them to that and holding Utah to, all right, it's time to provide us with that entertainment value. You got the extra money from us. It's now time for you to deliver on the entertainment as well. Entertain us is what I'm saying, right? And I think that's totally fair. I think that's that should be an important element to all of this, is that Utah fans should be keeping notes on all of this stuff.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Utah goes with the concessions. You've seen at Rice Eccles, you've seen the concessions step up a little bit with bringing in some of those local restaurants, bringing them into stuff. It'd be interesting to see if Utah, Rice Eccles starts to go more of the way of the professional stadiums, right? You go into any professional stadium across the country, go back 10 years, it was just the hot dogs and the hard pretzels and the chicken fingers that were reheated from the previous game 3 weeks ago. but now like there's some really good food that you can get inside stadiums no matter where you go. And it'd be interesting to see if Utah moves in that direction. So maybe you are spending, $15 on your chicken tenders and French fries, but maybe it's the chicken tenders are tossed in a little bit of barbecue sauce and they weren't made 3 weeks ago kind of thing. And maybe the pretzels are always warm and soft on the whatever it might be. But I would expect that concession prices might go up a little bit, but the quality might also go up.
And I think that'll be important too. And one thing, as we're talking about this, I talked to somebody that was pretty involved with the new South End Zone and kind of the revenues behind it and what that's done for Utah, right? We know the South End Zone. It's got, that little restaurant in the South End Zone that you can become a member of and have access to. And on game days, they provide, food and all types of stuff for fans that have tickets in that end zone and what that has done is it's, I think, opened Utah's eyes to what a unique experience can provide fans and what that'll mean moving forward. So I do think they've learned a little bit from opening the South End Zone where you provide more unique food options, where you provide, an actual restaurant, restaurant quality option. And I'm curious to see if that is something that they elect to pursue with this influx of capital, is improving the concession stand options, is providing some of these more unique, opportunities with food and that sort of stuff, because there has been a good return on that in the South End Zone itself.
Yeah, and speaking of South End Zone, like another piece of this is like, and who gets impacted in all of this, like, Otro is going to control those corporate sponsorships. So some of the buck is going to be passed to the corporate sponsors. They're going to feel some of this, and the Otro Capital is going to. Their job is to find ways to make those corporate sponsorship dollars make more sense, and that's a word play there. Make more sense, right? So you'll see some of that. I'd imagine, and yeah, it's this is all very, very intriguing. It'll be a lot of fun to follow, and
and ultimately, I think Utah is focused on providing a richer game day experience. I know that there have been conversations about how they can improve it. It's all come back to the bottom line, and operating in a deficit. It's just restricted Utah and being able to do the sort of things that they want to do and all of that sort of stuff to provide that richer experience. And so I do think this, above all else, is kind of the why this was pursued for Utah, is to enhance the overall experience for fans, both in terms of being able to provide a very competitive product in the field of play, but then too just the overall experience in general, from the entertainment stuff, right? What we're seeing during timeouts, people want to see more than somebody catching, bombs from Sly Sylvester, punts, right? From Sly Sylvester. People want to see more than that. And, you can go to different arenas and different stadiums, and you can get a feel for what they do to provide fans with that sort of entertainment value. And I think Utah understands that they need to up their game on that front. And I think this is going to allow Utah to start doing some of those things to provide that richer experience. But ultimately, this is so much bigger than just that. This is way bigger than that. And I think Utah taking the first step, breaking the door down, is exciting. It's been met with a lot of criticism, obviously. And so Utah fans, you've got to take that on with a brave face, but you can do that knowing that you've got the right people in place leading and that understand truly what this is and what it can mean for Utah moving forward. I think that at the end of the day is what Utah fans should hold on to, is that you've got people in place that know what they're doing and are leading this thing.
Absolutely. And I don't think they're going to charge fans for bringing flags into the game, so
Yeah.
flags, bring your flags. There's no going to be $10 per, none of that. Just bring those flags and keep your eyes peeled for a better game day experience. That's a huge piece of this. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, dude. Any final thoughts before we put a bow on this one?
No, it's obviously it's exciting news. If you have any interest in University of Utah and that exciting news, maybe it's good to you, maybe it's not good to you, but it's intriguing at the very, very least. It's University of Utah put themselves at the forefront, put themselves absolutely on the national scene with the news that came out. And there'll be a lot of eyeballs on University of Utah, a lot of interest in how does the university navigate this new partnership? What does that translate to on-field results? It's going to be a lot of fun to follow this one, and I think it's a historic day for the University of Utah to say the least.
Yeah, no, definitely a historic day, and a lot to learn about all of this. Still to come over the next couple of weeks, couple of months, as Utah finalizes this deal and turns it into actual reality, and so plenty to learn. On this subject, I've certainly had to learn and rehearse a lot about private equity and NIL and all the entire landscape over the last 24 hours. It's been pretty wild to say the least, but I think this is a big deal for Utah in so many different ways, and excited to see what it translates to both in the short term and long term for the University of Utah. So we'll go ahead, we'll put a bow on this one. For myself, for Josh Bennett, this is the Utah Blockcast signing off.